Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another week. I'm your host, Luke, and though I believe that there is something else, something big coming after like this version of the internet, and all the sources and hype pointing towards the VR singularity, I myself have not tried and appreciated a proper VR AR extended reality experience, which is going to be really hard to demo in this video, and it's sort of been the narrative from researching, from scripting, and from writing this video. But the hype on VR and AR is pretty much very much real. So let's take a step back and judge VR as a tech bug, because though the hype is way up here, the actual practicality is way down here. You'll know what I mean in a second. And right when I was thinking this topic was really complicated to formulate because I'm a VR noob myself but highly anticipative of its future, it sort of hit me like, let's start with the basics, like some definitions. So VR is virtual reality, right? You put on the headset and be immersed in a completely different environment with virtual elements. But AR is augmented reality, right? You put on either the headset or a pair of glasses and have some virtual elements overlaid on top of the real world. So the rabbit hole of VR sort of dates back in early cinema and film time, where a cinematographer, Morton Heelig, invented the Sensorama, which was meant to completely immerse an audience in the movie. So it had things like sound producers, it had vibrators, it had 3D motion pictures, which was meant to fool the brain into thinking that that was the reality. But at some point, this tech graduated to the military, where it was used to train pilots on maneuvering, fighting, and crashing, without actually maneuvering, fighting, and crashing really expensive procurement. And this is where VR made perfect sense for quite some time. But the idea that this tech was for the general public was not commercialized yet. But it didn't stop companies like Nintendo release the Virtual Boy, and they did. But we're talking 1995, even the internet was not that popular yet. They were just not ready for VR at that time. So this only meant that the Virtual Boy would sadly be discontinued a year later after it was released. And the idea was forever buried until 17 years later, where this guy, Paul Malaki, and his team launched a Kickstarter for a project called Oculus, the first real VR headset of our time. The 17 years time gap meant people were ready for the virtual reality cinematic universe, which is no lie why Meta, formerly known as Facebook, straight up bought the Oculus for $2 billion. They were betting the reality of our future to be in VR. Since then, there have been a lot of, active, substantial competition in this relatively new field, all betting their efforts and resources on this being our future, the next big thing. So it seems like VR and AR are getting a lot of traction lately. I mean, people are investing on virtual land and property in the metaverse. Headsets are getting better and better. More importantly, they're getting smaller than ever. It seems like, heck, this is not some kind of dream or game. It is reality itself. But wait, headsets? What is so special about those? So VR headsets, these have changed a lot from being clunky and really heavy to being relatively small, really complex computers full of sensors and stuff. But the general construction of a VR headset is a pair of lenses that project stereoscopic image to our eyes, which then tricks our brain in the idea of depth, and a screen which projects the image. So right from the start, you can see that it is general optics. But these headsets come in two form factors. One is the VR accessory, which you plug in your phone and it essentially becomes the VR engine and display. Think of these like Samsung's Gear VR or Google's Cardboard, which takes advantage of the sensors like accelerometer and gyroscope in your phone to first be the display and second be the VR engine. But of course, these are as basic as headsets could get. I mean, even the immersion factor isn't all that convincing. Type 2 headsets, however, are their own standalone devices, which means they're their own computers, their own displays, and their own lenses. And the cost of producing a single standalone VR headset is pretty much high up. It's only so recently that there have been a lot of competition in this VR space that you can really get good enough headsets. Like, I'm talking the $300 MetaQuest 3S, but headsets can go a lot more expensive. I'm talking $3,500 level Apple Vision Pro. So yeah, This is even more ridiculous and great. When you look at the other side of the fence on AR, you've got normal looking pair of glasses complete with mics and cameras and silicon that augments your reality from just taking first person video like Meta Ray-Bans to complete 50 to 70-degree field of view like Snapchat glasses to full ping pong with Mark Zuckerberg in the Orion glasses. What could possibly go wrong? Well, a lot of things actually. When you look at the numbers, it just seems harder than ever to justify if this will become an actual reality someday or just $1 billion race to nothing like the AI assistant devices. And we all know what happened to those.
My name is Ted Nesmo. Actually, I'm a musician. I do the drums, I do the piano. I'm a vocalist. And my career education status, I'm a biomedical engineering. I'm an author. I write books, I write articles. Yeah, that's all.
So, this is Ted. I felt like if I'm going to be answering if VR will hit the bloom someday, I gotta ask people about their unique perspectives on tech. So, Ted is into music and engineering, and when I asked if VR will be the thing he would hop on his career, he said,
We can use the VR stuff while I'm playing the piano and she's singing or he's singing. It's gonna be great, you know.
Ted is thinking of a way of doing duets like never before. A chance to actually meet someone in a virtual studio and have like a little music session will completely change society as we know it. Ted and many more people like him are in a market adoption cycle of what we call the early adopters, meaning they psychologically are ready for this reality and will pretty much categorize somebody who uses VR as normal. I mean, if you know, you know. But for the other end of the spectrum, there is a lot, and get me, a lot of people who aren't ready and borderline skeptical about this idea. These people are like Ted's friends, and as Ted puts it,
My friends, my friends are very concentrated on their stuffs. Actually, I'm not so sure, but for the few that I know, yes, they are not interested in such stuff. They feel like what they have is gonna be taken.
but isn't this a great time to be hopping in this VR fantasy or something? I mean, the tech is all great and all, but do you actually see yourself spending really meaningful, productive time in VR, doing virtual business, connecting with people in a virtual society, or just playing games in VR? If you do, then these companies have spent really meaningful time social engineering your brain into thinking that that is the future. Basically, the narrative goes like, we human beings are slow-moving creatures in adapting trends, especially when we grow older. We just get comfortable with what we know. Like, how many of us use the stock messaging app, contacts, calendar, email, etc.? Turns out, a lot. Don't believe me? I don't blame you, it's a psychology and default bias thing. But when you look around and see smartphones and say, oh, these are really useful tech gadgets, turns out they didn't just spawn into existence overnight. They went through circles of acceptance from, oh, try this landline to, oh, it can be portable to, oh, it can be portable plus have some basic internet functions like texting to, oh, it can be a full computer. And so it takes time to social engineer not just smartphones, but basically any first-gen product, in our case VR. And when the market is not ready for a product, the product basically becomes ahead of its time. Take, for example, the Virtual Boy by Nintendo or Google Glass by Google. In these two iterations, both the market and the tech was not ready. For the market, they were still on the early adoption cycle to transition to smartphones, and the sudden jump to VR felt like a quantum leap. So, when will VR actually find its groove? To me, it's a matter of time. Clearly, there are a lot of things that were great to do in person, but seem even better to do in VR. I'm talking work, conferencing, games, movies, etc. And also when the tech is right enough to breed VR and AR. But today we've built the tech and everything about VR seems to be on the up and up, but we're still stuck in the market adoption cycle. Technically, we're stuck right here between the valley of early adoption to mass market, and we just one kick like the iPhone vibes back in the day to completely turn VR from a skeptical experimental idea to the next big thing. Like The headsets with time are getting smaller and smaller, but simultaneously glasses are getting better and better. And theoretically, with time, just enough money, and tech, these opposite extremes will sort of merge into a normal looking pair of glasses. I mean, I don't want to be that guy who walks in the streets looking like this just in the name of tech, but like this, yeah, now we're talking. But I think moving from this to this is pretty much the highest challenge, but not impossible. I mean, Meta is even flexing this concept with their Orion glasses. But from the material stack to the complicated optical stack to the crazy engineering, and I'm not mentioning even costs, no wonder Meta is keeping them a prototype now. But every company starts out saying they're making an AR glass but end up making a VR headset in the long run. Will Meta ditch the Orion concept? I don't know. But what I do know is this. Deep down, I want to try for myself in first person a proper VR experience. And as me and many more like Ted's friends, if the tech just gets better and better to a point where we can get a really great, really cheap pair looking of glasses, then yeah, I personally am going all in on this. Anyways, Ted, it was great meeting you. So, can you leave the audience with maybe some keys, like some melodies that you can play for us?
All right, no problem. You know, this is my style, so I can give you a little bit. I won't sing, I'll just play the melody.
No problem.